Hey everyone, welcome to Logan's Mosh Pit. Glad to have you here. Do me a favor and please subscribe if you haven't already. Gather round for another episode of Rock and Read. Today we'll be reading chapter 14 of Janis, Her Life in Music. I apologize if I read too fast. This is a long chapter. Don't want to take up too much of our valuable time. Chapter 14 is called Woman on the Verge. Straight from Janis's mouth, she once said, "I just may be a star someday. You know, it's funny. As it gets closer and more probable, being a star is really losing its meaning. But whatever, I'm ready." Let's get underway. Janis was no longer just a local sensation poster girl for the exciting new music represented at Monterey. National and UK newspapers and magazines ran her photo alongside articles praising her voice. The Monday morning headline in the San Francisco Examiner that accompanied Phil Elwood's coverage, "Dreams Come True in Monterey," seemed particularly appropriate. He called Janis the real queen of the festival, who repeated her triumphs Saturday afternoon in an encore performance last night. Most journalists lauded Janis while ignoring her bandmates, or at best, describing them as her backup musicians. The Village Voice's Richard Goldstein referred to them as sidemen, who focused on Janis, cradling her with her riffs and coaxing her vocal flights. One of the most meaningful validations for Janis arrived on June 22nd via a telegram from her parents. "Congratulations on being first page Los Angeles Times Monterey Festival report. Barbara's sending us a copy." The telegram was signed, "Your Port Arthur Fan Club." Also came word that the Joplins were planning a family trip to the city where their daughter had become a star. As much as her bandmates relished their commercial breakthrough, they weren't eager to cede control of Big Brother to Janis and clung to the idea of the group as a democracy. But her position had changed almost overnight, with the group's attorney, Bob Gordon, noticing that she was serious about her career. There was a lot of input from everybody in the band, but Janis was clearly the leader. Firmly established as Big Brother's focal point, she became the band's spokesperson. Journalists primarily wanted to talk to her. When Peter Albin and James Gurley lost their status, low-level resentments began to escalate. As for Janis, her entire personality attained an almost frightening intensity, is how Sam Andrews saw it. The fame she had always wanted was at hand, and she knew it. In the weeks following Monterey, Gordon and Julius Carpin began fielding calls from Clive Davis at Columbia Records, as well as scouts from Mercury and Atlantic Records. They were invited to attend Columbia's annual convention in Florida, where Davis made an initial low offer to sign the group, but Mainstream's Bob Shad remained unwilling to discuss selling the band's contract. Instead, to capitalize on the rapturous Monterey press, he quickly assembled and rushed out Big Brother and the Holding Company again, with no input from the band. Today, the album has a certain charm, with a folk rock sound and quirky songs showcasing Janis's fresh, self-assured vocals, the album's most obvious attribute. But the 10 tracks recorded in August and December 1966 did not accurately convey the group's current music. The entire LP was shorter in length than just one of Big Brother's live jams. The band members denounced the album immediately and refused to participate in any publicity efforts. They told a Berkeley Barb reporter they hoped it would flop, so they'd be released from their Mainstream contract. Regardless, the LP debuted on the Billboard album chart on September 2nd, eventually reaching number 60, though band members received no royalty checks. Most reviews were lukewarm, noting that the recording did not sound like the live band. Playboy complimented Janis's superb vocals on Bye Bye Baby, Women as Losers, and her own intense Intruder, but nonetheless called it disappointing and complained that she didn't sing lead on every track. In July, Janis's cousin Jean and her husband, visiting from LA, attended one of Big Brother's non-stop string of concerts, a double bill with 16-year-old singer-songwriter Janis Ian, whose controversial Society's Child about a biracial romance was then a hit, although many radio stations banned it. Janis and the Bronx-born Ian, on her first West Coast tour, bonded and stayed in touch. "She was 7 or 8 years older than me," Ian recalled, "but it didn't matter. We both had bad skin, we both felt overweight, we were both outsiders." Afterward, Big Brother went to a come-as-a-hippie party thrown by Gurley's sister-in-law. Big Brother dressed as straights, but Janis's relatives costumed as freaks. "A gas," Janis recalled. By then, she hadn't written home in months, but her cousin's visit motivated her to send off a lengthy letter with enclosed clippings that mark a real shift, she noted. I do hope you remember me after all this while. What can I say? Since Monterey, all this has come about. Gleason has been plugging us and has used me as a description for style, the inimitable Joplin style. Now we're getting interviewed, and my picture will be in Esquire and Playboy, not the center fold-out, but something about the festival. And Julius, our manager, said some lady from McCall's called and might use me in an article about young women breaking down barriers, or something like that. Oh, you saw the thing in Time, but you didn't see Newsweek. It had a picture of me. I hope all this and my excitement doesn't seem shallow to you. It really thrills me. Wow, I met 2 of the Rolling Stones, most of the Animals, and these are big groups, well respected and rich, baby. And they say I'm the best they've ever heard. Oh, God. I really am totally committed, and I dig it. I'm quite proud of myself because I'm really trying. Janis openly embraced her ambition, but also revealed her profound insecurity at her good fortune suddenly being taken away. Before, when I came out here, I just wanted to hang out and be wild and have a good time, but now that's all secondary. I still want to have a good time, you understand, but singing gives me so much satisfaction. Well, the recognition gives me a lot of satisfaction too, I must admit. Well, to summarize, Big Brother's doing great, and I just may be a star someday. You know, it's funny. As it gets closer and more probable, being a star is really losing its meaning. But whatever, I'm ready. Janis may have questioned the meaning of her celebrity because she already feared Seth Joplin's Saturday night swindle, leading to a letdown or unhappiness, or worse, a life-threatening development. Clearly, though, as illustrated by her name-dropping, Janis enjoyed the approbation of rock luminaries, including Jimi Hendrix. Just after Monterey, he had played 6 nights at the Fillmore, drawing ecstatic crowds. Big Brother performed on the bill the last night on June 26th. The audience went nuts over him, Peter Albin recalled about Hendrix's erotically charged performance. Afterward, Janis reported to her bandmates that women waited in line to duck into the backstage bathroom for a quickie with Hendrix, but she declined to wait her turn. Still, rumors have persisted that Hendrix and Janis got it on backstage at the Fillmore, according to Hendrix biographer Charles Cross, whose research found that neither principal ever directly confirmed this tryst. Jimmy and Janis did make a connection, whether sexually consummated or not. When Hendrix asked her advice about playing a free show in a flatbed truck in the Panhandle being organized by Mark Bronstein, Janis said, "Do it." And Hendrix put on a concert that has since been counted among his best. Whenever their paths crossed, Janis and Jimmy showed affection and respect for each other. Their careers and lives seemed headed down parallel tracks. She did not get along so well with another hot new artist, Jim Morrison. In July, Janis met the Doors' lead singer when they played a weekend of shows at the Fillmore. The LA-based band's second single, Light My Fire, had just become a pop smash, with Morrison being cast as a cross between a teen idol and Dionysus. Janis joined the band for dinner one night, and afterward, Morrison, his girlfriend Pamela Carson, Sam Andrew, and Dave Richards congregated at Janis's apartment. After hours of drinking, Morrison and Janis escaped to her boudoir. Carson fled in tears, and Andrew escorted her back to her hotel room. Later, Janis complained about Morrison's unresponsiveness in bed and habit of slugging down booze the moment he woke up. A pair of battling egos, Janis and Morrison's relationship was toxic from the start and would only worsen. In mid-August, the Joplins, Seth and Dorothy, Laura, 18, and 14-year-old Michael arrived in San Francisco. Months earlier, Janis had encouraged the trip, brimming with enthusiasm. "You'll just love San Francisco. I know you will. Actually, I've always hoped Laura would try to go to college out here, so maybe she could see some of the campuses while here. And of course, I'll take you to one of the big dances, and you can see us perform. Oh, I'd really like for you to. I have so many places to take you and show you." Yet Janis worried to friends about making a good impression, particularly on her mother. "We were the only teenagers who went to the Summer of Love with their parents," Laura quipped later. On the day the Joplins arrived, Big Brother had recently returned from an inaugural concert at Chet Helms' new venue in Colorado, the Denver Dog. After playing the previous night in Santa Clara, Janis arose very early on Sunday, August 13th, to meet them. She was giddy with excitement, Laura recalled in Love Janis, proudly showing off the Hyde-Ashbury scene and her exalted status within it. We strolled the streets, with Janis pointing to favorite head shops, dress shops, and the attire of interesting people on the street. She couldn't stop sharing her excitement over her favorite Beatle, George Harrison's recent visit to the neighborhood, that he had strolled the sidewalks right where we walked. The previous week, on August 7th, Harrison, his wife Patty, and their entourage had spent the afternoon in the Height with Patty's sister, Jenny Boyd, then living in San Francisco. Tripping on acid as they strolled, they caught the attention of fans who wanted Harrison to sing. One minute there were 5, then 10, 20, 30, and 40 people behind us, Patty recounted. It was horrible. Ghastly dropouts, bums, and spotty youths all out of their brains. Everybody looked stoned, even mothers and babies. And they were so close behind us, they were treading on the backs of our heels. It got to the point where we couldn't stop for fear of being trampled. Then somebody said, "Let's go to Hippie Hill." And we crossed the grass of Golden Gate Park, our retinue facing us as if we were on stage. They looked at us expectantly, as if George was some kind of messiah. The Joplin family's experience was not as harrowing as the Harrisons, but troubling in a different way. Janis invited them up to her apartment to meet the family she had written them about. George and a new kitten, no name yet, gray with a little brown and white, and very aggressive. When she's hungry, she follows me around and shrieks at me. George takes really good care of her, licks her, carries her around in his mouth, and she in turn eats only dog food and chews on his bones. It's a strange family, but it's mine. To the Joplins, her apartment, adorned with swaths of silk, brocade, lace, Indian print spreads, and family dog and Fillmore handbills, looked as exotic as the Arabian Nights. Janis's friends admired the way she had artfully decorated her home, but her parents were aghast. They stood silently before one wall she had papered with multiples of her semi-nude poster, while Janis preempted any comment about her exposed nipple. "It hardly shows, Mother. I'll give Mike one if you'll let him keep it." Unlike the female nude Janis had painted on her closet door as a teen, Dorothy could do nothing about this breach in propriety. She refused to let Mike, the same age Janis was when she first rebelled, take home any posters his big sister offered. That night, Big Brother wasn't booked at the Avalon, but Janis arranged for them to play a few songs during Moby Grape's slot so that her family could see her on stage. In an earlier letter, she had tried sweetly, in vain, to convince her parents to slightly alter your travel plans so you can see us play somewhere. You see, we work every weekend, and you can all come to a dance and wear beads and see us and see a light show and be proud of me. Trudging up the Avalon stairs, the Joplins were welcomed inside by Chet Helms, who waived the admission charge, Laura recalled, while Janis danced with glee, telling him we were her family. Entering the dance hall, the overpowering sounds and cruising body stunned me. I felt like a stranger, set apart by my clothes and by not being stoned. Big Brother performed a few tunes, working in synchronized fashion with the swirling lights. I was awed by the whole experience, though the music was only a bit of it. The other family member who commented publicly on Big Brother's Avalon performance that night was the understated Bach and Beethoven fan Seth Joplin. In a 1970 interview with Rolling Stone reporter Chet Flippo, "I couldn't imagine the volume of sound. Truly incredible," he said, "but she was good. The band put on a special performance free for our benefit." After Big Brother played, Mike, who recalled being very excited, tried unsuccessfully to coax some pot smokers to share a joint with him backstage. With Janis sending a signal not to indulge him, no one would relent to his pleadings, said Laura, and the visiting family made a move toward the door. As Laura recalled later to filmmaker Amy Berg, "I remember overhearing one of my parents tell the other one, 'You know, dear, I don't think we're going to have much influence anymore.'" Outside on desolate Sutter Street, Janis saw her parents' negative reaction to the Avalon and took it as a personal rejection, as if their dislike of the experience meant they had also disapproved of her and her status as the scene's reigning queen. She was a Joplin, capable of being as judgmental about her parents as they were of her. From this moment forth, just as she was separated from being one of the boys in Big Brother, she began to withdraw from her family. Janis would look to her an increasing fan base, an expanding circle of friends, and various numbing agents, alcohol, and eventually heroin, to anesthetize herself from the pain of having lost that connection. Though she called home occasionally, she would not write the Joplins for some 5 months, and her family never visited her in San Francisco again. Soon after, Janis added to her Lion Street family. Linda Gravenites, the estranged wife of Big Brother's Chicago friend Nick Gravenites, had moved to San Francisco in 1959. Like Dorothy Joplin, Linda was an excellent seamstress, and she designed and made costumes for the improv group The Committee. Janis commissioned an ensemble for the band's upcoming performance at the Monterey Jazz Festival. A statuesque brunette who had briefly been a North Beach topless dancer, Gravenites had seen numerous Big Brother gigs, but didn't click initially with Janis, finding her unapproachable, she recalled. I felt like she would bite my head off. She scared me. Now the pair clicked, particularly when Janis discovered that Linda's first husband was North Beach denizen Patrick Cassidy. A fond fling of Janis's back in 1964. She said, "Oh, how wonderful! One of my mythic men," Gravenites recounted. That connection was really why she got interested in knowing who I was, and we became friends. Linda, 4 years older than Janis, had been house-sitting at 710 Ashbury for the touring Dead, and after their return, Janis invited her to crash on her couch while she finished the outfit for Monterey. Gravenite's position as Janis's roommate and helpmate became official when one day Janis was looking around at the dirty dishes and said, "I need a mother." And I said, "I can do that," Linda recalled. I could take care of the things she didn't want to or didn't think about. The timing couldn't have been better. Janis needed a replacement for the always energetic and organized Dorothy Joplin, as well as a support system and a voice of reason. Over the next few years, Gravenites was much more than Janis's costume designer, surrogate mom, and roommate. She was her closest companion, who would always voice her opinion whether Janis wanted to hear it or not. Gravenites, to her surprise, discovered that Janis kept an organized house, carefully maintaining a budget, definitely a trait learned from her mother. Paying a $75 a month rent, she knew exactly to the penny her expenses, Linda noted, and where her $100 weekly salary was spent. At home, Janis read constantly, and that fall, she couldn't put down Ecstasy and Me, My Life as a Woman, a ghost-written memoir from the misunderstood actress Heidi Lamar. The Austrian sex symbol never got the credit she deserved for her intellect. In the 1940s, as part of the U.S. war effort, she helped invent a radio guidance system that led the way to Wi-Fi and Bluetooth. A problem that hit home for Janis, whose wild woman persona overshadowed the fact that she had a keen mind. A voracious reader, Janis always traveled with books. Gravenites eventually designed and made a gorgeous beaded bag for Janis to carry everything from bestsellers such as Ira Levin's Rosemary Baby to favorite novels by Thomas Wolfe and F. Scott Fitzgerald to nonfiction, including a collection of Fitzgerald's letters and Nancy Mitford's biography of his wife Zelda. Linda Gravenites had many male friends, one of whom, charismatic Milan Melvin, became Janis's latest lover. Tall and lanky with long black hair, he sold ads for radio station KMPX and hung out with members of the committee. No one knew it then, but as a Berkeley student from 1960 to 1964, Melvin had been a paid FBI informant infiltrating communist and student activist groups. Eventually, he quit informing and attempted to disappear in the Nevada desert, where he discovered the Red Dog Saloon and adopted the cosmic cowboy look of Stetson boots, western shirt, and turquoise jewelry. A bit of a hustler, but no Peter DeBlanc, he had moved into committee member and future screenwriter of Jaws, Carl Gottlieb's apartment, where he and Janis connected. The first thing that attracted me to Janis was her laugh, Melvin recounted. Only bad girls threw their heads back and belted out a laugh like that. I remember Janis and me coming together like crazed wildcats in heat, just kicking and clawing and biting and scratching and making love until we were near dead, and then getting up and taking some more drugs and then doing it again. Melvin was among the few with whom Janis dropped acid. When not performing, Janis prowled the height with Linda, often accompanied by Sunshine and Susie Perry, guzzling beer and flirting with passerby. 4 Capricorn ladies getting louder by the minute, Gravenites recalled. People would just sort of part as we came down the street with our paper bags of Rainier ale. Sometimes they ventured to North Beach, teasing the longshoremen and playing 8-ball at the Gino and Carlo pool hall. Janis usually won. Her new circle of friends also included Philadelphia-born artist Robert Crumb, whom she met through her Austin pal Gilbert Shelton, both now leading lights of the underground comic scene then underway in San Francisco. Janis liked me and S. Clay Wilson, And those other cartoonists recalled Crumb, a shy and awkward man who was the creator of Mr. Natural, and along with Wilson and Shelton, contributed regularly to Zap Comics. Janis, seeing in Crumb her Esther Wilde geeky visual artist self, was drawn to the talented artist and blues fan. She could be herself around them, kick back, drink, laugh, and flirt. I even made out with her once, recalled Crumb, who was admittedly stunned by Janis and this group of loud-mouthed, hard-drinking, hippie, oaky girls, kind of tough and rough, kind of intimidating. If she were in town and got a call from Crumb, she'd head right over with these girlfriends of hers, said Crumb. They were tanked up, they were wild, they were game for anything. Becoming famous for the lewd, big-bottomed, braless women he drew, Crumb seemed inspired by Janis and her pals, who would jack me around for a couple hours, he said. They were the ultimate, hippest, coolest girls around. According to Linda's estranged husband, Nick Gravenites, I called them the Capricorn women. Wild and crazy and loud, hard-drinking, liberated women. They go out and raise hell, cuss like lumberjacks. Nobody could keep up with them. Meanwhile, the remaining camaraderie between Big Brother and manager Julius Carpin frayed further after Monterey. Janis had not forgiven him for his dogged opposition to their being filmed by Pennebaker, and she began to think that Carpin, a heavy pot smoker, was too much of a hippie to handle their affairs properly. She wanted national stardom, and he seemed out of his league in pursuing that goal. He often nagged Janis about her drinking, which further annoyed her. The band all agreed there was a problem when he wouldn't allow them to see his accounting ledger or report how much money they had earned. Instead of increasing their salaries, Gurley recalled, he said we needed to accumulate a good stash to cover band expenses. We'd say, "How much money is in there, Julius?" And he'd say, "I don't know." And we just never got anywhere with him. Peter Albin reported to Big Brother that his Uncle Henry, a shrewd businessman, told him that they deserved to be robbed blind if they didn't insist on inspecting their manager's ledger. The breaking point came in mid-September 1967, when Bill Graham booked Big Brother to open at the prestigious Hollywood Bowl for their marquee event. Bill Graham presents the San Francisco Scene, starring Jefferson Airplane and the Grateful Dead. Since it was scheduled the night before their set at the Monterey Jazz Festival, Graham offered to charter a plane for the band members. Posters and advertisements listed Big Brother, but at the last minute, Carpin wouldn't sign the contract because Graham gave them only 20 minutes on stage. When the promoter offered to increase their fee to compensate for the short set, Carpin refused. Graham then contacted Albin and got him to sign the contract, but Carpin, incensed, demanded they not play. Big Brother backed out without notice. Los Angeles Times music columnist Pete Johnson noted in his coverage of the Hollywood Bowl concert, Janis was livid over the missed opportunity, but she became even angrier over a later incident involving Carpin at the Monterey Jazz Festival on September 16th. Big Brother was included in the Saturday afternoon Big Blues Bag segment, along with B.B. King, influential Texas guitarist T-Bone Walker, and gospel greats the Clara Ward Singers. Legendary Columbia Records A&R man John Hammond, who signed Billie Holiday and Bob Dylan, invited Janis to join him in his box seats when not on stage. The audience, a mix of black and white jazz and blues fans, was more sedate than the Pop Fest crowd 3 months earlier. Janis had taken up cigarettes again and smoked nervously until it was time for Big Brother to hit the stage. She was scared silly, according to Ralph Gleason, who booked them at the Jazz Fest. I think she was scared silly every time she went on stage. As he wrote later, there she was, this freaky-looking white kid from Texas on stage with all the hierarchy of the traditional blues world, facing an audience that was steeped in blues tradition, which was older than her ordinary audience, in which it built a tendency to regard electric music as the enemy. The first thing she did was say, and that endeared her right away. Then she stomped her foot and shook her hair and started to scream. They held still for a couple of seconds, but here and there in the great sunlit arena, long hair started getting up and out into the aisles and stomping along with the band. By the end of the first number, the arena was packed with people, writhing, twisting, and snaking along. It was an incredible sight. Nothing like it had ever happened before in the festival's 10 years. It was Janis's day, no doubt about it. Old and young, long hair or short, black or white, they reacted like somebody had stuck a hot wire in their butt. After the set, Janis asked Gleason about the cameraman capturing the proceedings for a San Francisco TV special. Did you film it? She asked, quivering when she got off stage. Gleason recalled. I had to tell her, no. She was disappointed. She knew what it had been. And God knows, the world had less than it might have because we couldn't film that incredible performance. But Janis's manager at the time, in a burst of paranoia still to be equaled, had refused to okay our filming of Janis's performance. Enraged, Janis demanded the band fire Carpin. Back in San Francisco, when Big Brother again asked to see the books, he still refused. As it turned out, he kept piles of receipts rather than maintain any kind of professional ledger. The band and Carpin agreed to part ways 6 weeks later. Adding to the tension, Janis's bandmates got a nasty review in the influential underground paper Los Angeles Free Press, following their 6-night run at the Golden Bear Club in Huntington Beach. And Janis Joplin, too full of soul for holding company partners, Larry Kopp signaled out Janis for her talent, writing that she had the guts of Ma Rainey and Bessie Smith, with the control and precision of Nancy Wilson or Billie Holiday, and with a style that makes James Brown look like the Ziegfeld Follies. In contrast, Kopp complained that Big Brother doesn't come up to her level, and then dissected each instrumentalist's foibles. He observed that Janis starts out as if she's playing a game, making drug references, pointing the index finger of each hand upward like Betty Boop, making cute expressions that don't seem to have any relation to the music. Her style looks put on until something clicks, and her hands find the beat, and she becomes her music. The review confirmed Janis's worst fears about her bandmates. They weren't up to her talent. The Huntington Beach run was fraught for other reasons, too. Because Big Mama Thornton opened for Big Brother, Janis felt guilty being the headliner and also worried that she would look terrible next to her. According to Carpin, she drank more than usual to the point that Thornton, herself an alcoholic, told Janis backstage, "Honey, you better stop drinking. It'll kill your voice." Then one night after a show, Janis's life took an ugly turn that would lead to the worst possible Saturday night swindle. James Gurley turned her on to heroin. Certainly the same burdens that escalated her drinking contributed to her shooting up with Gurley, the high wire pressures of her now explosive career, the painful distance from her parents, and Big Brother's growing jealousy of her star power. When I discovered the heroin use, it really brought me down, Carpin later told writer Joel Selvin. Janis was already into alcohol problems, but this seemed major. When Janis confessed to Linda Gravenice that she had shot up smack, her roommate urged her to stay away from it. But Janis had stumbled onto a blanket of numbness that she would soon crave again. Better than anything else, heroin briefly cured her loneliness, anxiety, insecurity, and sense of dislocation, all in one shot. Gurley, who idolized junkies, such as legendary jazz saxophonist John Coltrane and Charlie Parker, neither of whom lived past 40, later shrugged off his own heroin use as a new world to explore, more of an adventure thing. He claimed its usefulness as a tool that would cool you out trying to burn off the energy, to knock you down so you could go to sleep. We'd be so tanked up after the show with adrenaline, I would never be able to sleep past dawn. Just as Janis had jumped back into shooting speed with Nancy Gurley the previous year, she now followed James, who had been dabbling with heroin for a while. Soon after, Janis shot heroin again, according to Linda Gravenites, with Paul Whaley, the 21-year-old blonde-haired drummer for Blue Cheer, named for a brand of LSD and managed by Gut, a former Hell's Angel. Janis sometimes stayed at the hard rock trio's communal home in Marin. Blue Cheer guitarist Leah Steffens remembered her and Whaley once finding a scorpion and as a prank placing it next to Steven's toothbrush. Heroin and playing around with cute young boys, said Gravenites, helped Janis deal with her life's mounting pressures. The height had veered out of control, with noise, crime, and drugs, and the police had started cracking down. In October, Big Brother was nearly busted for disturbing the peace while performing at the Matrix. The club was shuttered briefly because of neighborhood noise complaints. The narcotics squad raided the Grateful Dead's house at 710 Ashbury. Though the police uncovered only a bit of cannabis, they arrested employees, friends, and 2 band members, Pigpen and Bob Weir, neither of whom smoked pot. On October 6th, the Diggers staged a Death of Hippie parade that ended at the Psychedelic Shop, where afterward owners Jay and Ron Thielen gave away all the merchandise and closed the store. For Janis, it hurt to watch the destruction and loss of her formerly beautiful community, another reason to get numb. In November, the most famous rock manager in America, Albert Grossman, arrived in San Francisco from New York to meet with Big Brother. Before contacting him, the band had heatedly discussed management possibilities amongst themselves and with friends. They had even approached Bill Graham about handling them, but the promoter nixed the idea. Janis needed somebody to really lock into her career and life, he reflected later. I wasn't qualified to manage Janis. I remember saying if they wanted somebody of strength, they should go with Albert. Carpin claimed later that he recommended they hire Grossman and called his office to set up a meeting. Linda Gravenites also knew Grossman through Nick and other Chicago musicians. When Janis asked her opinion whether they should go outside the San Francisco bubble and sign with him, Gravenites told her bluntly, "If you just want to keep playing around here, no. If you want to become an international star, absolutely." With intermediary Bob Gordon, who had previously done legal work for Grossman, they made the call to New York. The arbiter of hip, Albert Grossman was known for his excellent taste, shrewd negotiating skills, and inscrutability. Born in 1926 in Chicago, he got his start in show business by co-founding the Gate of Horn Club, and then moved into management, handling folk artist Bob Gibson and Janis's early inspiration, Odetta. In 1959, he collaborated with jazz impresario George Wein on his first Newport Folk Festival, after which he moved to New York in 1961. He put together the trio Peter, Paul, and Mary, with whom he enjoyed his first big commercial success. He signed Bob Dylan just after his 1962 Columbia Records debut, with the two becoming nearly inseparable. Grossman, looking like a cross between Benjamin Franklin and a wise old owl, a father figure to Dylan, his scruffy and brilliant young upstart. At the negotiating table, Grossman's impenetrability worked in his favor, his opponents often scrambling to offer better terms in response to his frequent silences. Among many other achievements, Grossman was the first music manager to insist his clients be referred to in contracts as artists, rather than act or entertainer, which today is an industry standard. By late 1967, Grossman had accumulated a stable of artists hailing from Chicago, New York, and Canada. He had not yet seen a San Francisco act that interested him, until he saw Janis at Monterey. When they convened at her Lyon Street apartment in November, the reserved Grossman's cool demeanor unsettled the band. He didn't say much, but asked them questions and listened intently. The only topic that seemed to arouse emotion in him was heroin. His client, Michael Bloomfield, among others, had started using smack, and Grossman's first wife had been a junkie. A requirement of working with him, he told Big Brother, was no smeeze. Recognizing the old-school term for the drug, they all nodded their heads in agreement. He was a very intimidating, strange guy, recalled Dave Getz, down to the way he held his cigarette between his little finger and his ring finger. He didn't say a lot, but he was big, and he had a lot of presence and charisma. We were, of course, intimidated by the fact that he was Bob Dylan's manager. Bob Dylan was like a god to most of us, beyond human. Tacked to Janis's wall, in fact, was a large black and white poster of a saluting Bob Dylan. Also at the meeting was attorney Bob Gordon, still serving as Big Brother's lawyer. Their prospective new manager demanded 20% of his client's earnings, rather than the typical 15%. When asked about the higher percentage, Grossman responded with a challenge. If he couldn't make them $100,000 the first year, they could tear up that contract and not owe him a penny. It was a huge sum for a band that, according to Dave Getz, made barely $25,000 that year. After they signed the paperwork on November 11th, Grossman began putting their finances in order. As with his other clients, he set up a Big Brother publishing company with Bob Gordon as secretary, and each band member designated an officer and receiving shares of stock. This was so they could earn more from their songwriting. He also retrieved the receipts from Carpin so that his accountant could organize their business records. As he began negotiating with Clive Davis to pony up enough money to release Big Brother from its mainstream contract and sign the group to Columbia. Meanwhile, band members' salaries were doubled to $200 a week. Back in New York, Grossman hired the band's first road manager, John Bryan Cook, a 25-year-old folk musician, Harvard graduate, and the son of British-born journalist and broadcaster Alistair Cook. Cook was referred to by his former roommate and Dylan confidant Bob Newworth, who had turned down for the gig. An aspiring filmmaker, Cook, who had worked for Penn Baker at Monterey and witnessed Big Brother's breakthrough. Though a novice at road managing, the New Yorker had tired of Cambridge and was game for something new. Cook's $150 weekly salary would come from Big Brother's performance fees, with the Grossman office setting up West Coast bookings and an upcoming East Coast Midwest tour beginning in February 1968. Before venturing west, Cook asked Neuwirth for insight into his newfound profession. "Don't carry their guitars or do beer or cigarette runs," Neuwirth advised. "Keep it businesslike. You're the road manager, not the roadie, and don't make friends with them, or you won't be able to tell them what to do." The well-bred Cook's authoritative manner made him the perfect candidate for the job. During their first meeting at the band's rehearsal space on December 1st, Cook appeared the complete opposite of the hippie road crews to which they were accustomed. At 6'1", with short dark hair and a neat mustache, he dressed like the Ivy Leaguer he was. He was a connoisseur, a raconteur, and quite a good photographer, according to his former flame and longtime friend singer Judy Collins. After Janis asked Cook his astrological sign, Libra, she replied dismissively, "I don't care that much about Libra one way or the other." Still, his chiseled good looks appealed to her, and she confided later to Getz she thought he was cute. In December, Big Brother traveled back and forth to Los Angeles, beginning with a performance at the Cheetah Club, followed by several bookings at the famed Whiskey A Go-Go on the Sunset Strip in West Hollywood. They packed opening night at the Whiskey didn't go as well as the band had hoped. Sam Andrew broke a string and played out of tune, and Janis drank too much Southern Comfort, but they still managed to permanently alter the emotional atmosphere of the city, according to Ron Koslow in the tip sheet KYA Beat. "We won't be the same until Janis and her voice come back to us. She's a cross between Bessie Smith, Joan of Arc, and a Bengal tiger. A very, very beautiful animal who all at once makes you want to laugh and cry and shriek with terror." For the first time in 16 months, Janis flew home to Port Arthur around the holidays. Her family welcomed her back, and longtime friends Adrian and Gloria Haston threw a party in her honor. Janis was thrilled to see the old gang, who were so proud of her success. Things hadn't changed much in Port Arthur. Though dressed in her freaky finery, she stopped at a convenience store to buy cigarettes and was jeered at by the clerk. Janis flew into the guy, according to Gloria, but she didn't come back and cry about it. There was a great deal of business and bravado. He handed out copies of Big Brother's 45s and showered her family with Christmas gifts. Sitting on the Joplin coffee table were numerous magazines featuring Janis, including a copy of Look, with a full-page portrait of Big Brother and the Dead, shot by famed photographer Irving Penn. A color insert from the San Francisco Examiner featured Janis modeling a yellow poncho, her dog George at her feet, alongside other Bay Area women clad in ensembles by an up-and-coming San Francisco designer. Dorothy had notified the Port Arthur News about the triumphant return of her daughter, and reporter Leonard Duckett spent an afternoon with the family, interviewing Janis about her career. A photograph of a rather shell-shocked looking Dorothy and Seth, with a beaming Janis, Mike, and Laura accompanying the article. Janis Joplin drawing Acclaim, blues singer with soul, in which he described her as wearing her hair long and wild, hippie fashion, and her clothes too fall in the style of what she wears with performing. Long strings of beads and rings, rings, rings. "I don't want to do anything outside the band," Janis assured Duckett. "I've had a few offers to leave, but this is what I want to do. The band is making money. That's what it's all about, isn't it?" Duckett ended his story, noting that by now Janis Joplin is back in San Francisco doing the music she loves. What Duckett couldn't have known was that she had left behind Port Arthur and the Joplins for good. She would visit again, but she had moved far beyond their influence. Her comment about their finances might have been a way to send that message. While her parents were proud of her success, they disapproved of her life, and Janis knew it. The more provocative remarks and insults about Texas she uttered to the press, the angrier she'd become. But she had discovered a new family of admirers who would shower her with their approval and advice she needed. Between Albert Grossman and Linda Gravenites, she may well have felt that she found stand-ins for Seth and Dorothy Joplin. Back in Los Angeles for another whiskey residency, Janis got more of the star treatment. Her now dear friend Peter Tork hosted a party for Big Brother at the Laurel Canyon Estate, where everyone was wearing bright Indian clothing and crashing on a floor filled with pillows and hashish pipes, according to Janice Ian, also a guest. There were dozens of naked people lolling around. I shrugged it off, trying to look cool. Big Brother had purchased an equipment truck for Dave Richards and roadie Mark Bronstein. Both would join them on the upcoming East Coast tour. Bands and crew stayed at the low-budget, seedy Hollywood Sunset Motel, but John Cook made it clear that in the future they would choose better lodgings. Big Brother saw vividly what pop stardom could bring when invited to the Bel Air mansion of John and Michelle Phillips. When Mamas and Papas hits and songwriting royalties, the couple could afford an estate previously owned by the 1930s silver screen star Jeanette MacDonald, complete with roaming peacocks. John was totally hosting us like stars, Dave Getz recounted, getting us high, showing us around. It was that kind of moment where we felt like we had arrived in L.A. at the top echelon. We were being stroked by everyone. In the screening room, the group gathered to watch Penn Baker's rough cut of the Monterey Pop Festival. When shown footage of Jimi Hendrix humping his amp and lighting his guitar on fire, ABC had nixed the Movie of the Week plan and given Lou Adler and Phillips the rights to the film. The producers then made a distribution deal for a theatrical release of the movie for 1968, which would feature Janis's face in ads and Big Brother's combination of the two as the title track. John Cook had seen much of the footage, but not the edited film, he recalled, though Big Brother had not yet viewed anything. He noticed Janis's eyes grow wide as the film revealed Big Brother's performance of Ball and Chain. Though the segment opens with frames of Getz playing drums, followed by Albin on bass, the camera then fixes on Janis, and that's where most of the footage remains. Early's long guitar break was edited out. The film captures powerfully Janis's magnificent performance and vocal talent, while her band fades into the background. When Janis saw the close-up of the Rap Mama cast watching her on stage with amazement, she exclaimed, "Far out! How did he get that shot?" The band understandably was not pleased by the camera's focus on Janis. "It wasn't the group everyone wanted," Getz said. "It was Janis. We assumed we'd appear in the movie as a band, but seeing it was a shock. It was all Janis. They saw her as a superstar in the making. I realized that though we were finally going to be making money and go to another level, it also meant our little family was being separated. There was Janis, and there was the band." Big Brother's epiphany in the screening room marked the beginning of the band's real success, and also the band's end. Well, that's the end of Chapter 14. Let me know what you guys thought of Chapter 14 in the comments below. That does it for today's video, guys. I hope you enjoyed. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe if you haven't already. I really appreciate the support. I'll see you next time. Until then, rock on.